Hey man, let's get something crystal clear right from the start, because if you don't absorb this fundamental principle down to your bones, you will spend the rest of your life in a state of perpetual confusion, heartbreak, and maddening frustration. When it comes to how a woman experiences life, relationships, and the labyrinth of love, it is not logic that dominates her reality. It is not a rational calculus of pros and cons. It is emotion, it is sensation. It is the intricate, sprawling, feature-length cinematic stories she builds, directs, and stars in inside her own mind. For her, fantasy isn't just a fleeting moment of entertainment. It's the very lens through which she interprets and colors everything around her. A romantic movie, a viral TikTok montage of a perfect couple, a fleeting moment of intense attention from a guy she barely knows, all of it becomes the raw material, the foundational bricks for her emotional reality. This isn't a flaw, it's a feature of the feminine operating system. And when you, as a grounded man operating in a world of cause and effect, of principles and truth, try to introduce logic and unwavering consistency, she will often reject it. This rejection doesn't happen because she's evil, manipulative, or consciously playing games. It happens for a much simpler and more profound reason. Your unvarnished truth simply doesn't feel as good, as intoxicating, as the fantasy she has, meticulously constructed. And in her world, the world governed by feminine energy, feeling almost always wins over fact. Have you ever been in a situation where she told you with tears in her eyes how much she loved you, how special you were, how you were different from every man she'd ever met, only to watch her ghost you a week later without a single word of explanation? That profound confusion you felt, that emotional whiplash that made you question your own sanity, is the direct result of her emotional world failing to align with yours. You were operating on the premise that words have weight and that promises build a future. She was operating on a completely different system. You see, when she said those things, she absolutely meant them. In that specific, emotionally charged moment, those feelings were as real to her as the air she was breathing. You triggered a powerful emotional peak, and she built an entire narrative around that feeling, casting you as the hero of her story. But then, inevitably, something shifted. The emotional peak subsided. Maybe the initial energy between you settled into a comfortable rhythm, maybe her hormones dipped, maybe a friend planted a seed of doubt. Is he really exciting enough for you? Or maybe she simply got bored. Just like that, the fantasy, the story of you being the one collapsed. And when the feeling collapsed, so did the truth she had built around it. Her promises, her declarations, her vision of a future with you, they were all scaffolding built around the temporary structure of a feeling, not a principle of commitment. This is the inherent danger of trying to build a fortress with someone who lives inside an ever-changing story instead of facing the raw, unfiltered present moment with you. She doesn't live in the moment with you. She lives in the potential of the moment. She is an emotional tourist. She wants to visit the beautiful sights of a deep relationship, the intimacy, the loyalty, the profound connection, but she doesn't want to live there. She doesn't want to pay the taxes of compromise, accountability, and navigating the quiet valleys of comfortable boredom that all real, long-term relationships have. She just wants the postcard moments, the highlight reel. This is why you see this play out constantly in the chaotic theater of modern dating. A woman will meet a guy, and within days, she will project all her hopes, dreams, and unfulfilled romantic desires onto him. She falls in love, not with the man who stands before her, but with the idea of who he might be, the character she has cast him as in her internal movie. She is the scriptwriter, and you are the actor she has hired for a role. The script, which has been influenced by a lifetime of Disney movies, rom-coms, and social media narratives, is already written. When you, the actor, try to go off with your own authentic lines and actions, your reality, she doesn't see it as authenticity. She sees it as you ruining her artistic vision. She yells, "Cut," in her mind, and begins the process of recasting the part. She doesn't take the time to study your values, your character, your consistency, or your flaws. In fact, she often willfully ignores glaring red flags because the story in her head is far more intoxicating and addictive than the inconvenient facts on the ground. This is precisely why the perfect guy, the stable, kind, consistent manafan, gets dumped for the toxic one. It's not a logical decision, it's an emotional one. It's not about who's a better partner, it's about who better fuels the emotional roller coaster her fantasy thrives on. Think of it like an emotional scoreboard. The stable man provides consistency, respect, and peace. On a logical scoreboard, he's winning by a landslide. But on her emotional scoreboard, those things score 0 points. They don't generate a feeling. The toxic guy, however, with his unpredictability, his unavailability, and his manufactured drama creates massive swings of emotion. The pain of him pulling away, followed by the intense relief of him coming back, creates a powerful dopamine hit that her nervous system registers as passion or aliveness. He is a better dealer of the emotional drug she is addicted to. Her fantasy doesn't just shape how she sees men, it dictates how she sees herself. This is why you'll meet women who are objectively struggling and life broke, miserable, and confused, but who still genuinely believe they deserve a man who is a millionaire, emotionally mature, physically perfect, wildly successful, a charming poet, and available 24/7. They don't see the glaring disconnect between who they are and what they demand because, in their fantasy, they are already the main character, the queen, the ultimate prize. Their social media feed, a curated shrine to their own fantasy life, reinforces this delusion. Anything that threatens that powerful illusion, accountability, fair standards, uncomfortable truths, is rejected violently. Try pointing out this inconsistency, and you'll be swiftly labeled as insecure, controlling, or toxic. Not because you're wrong, but because you are disrupting the dream. And that dream, brother, is more sacred to her than your logic will ever be. Your truth requires her to change, her fantasy requires you to. It's a much easier and more comfortable choice for her to make. So what do you do? As a man who lives in reality, who builds with his hands and his mind, how do you navigate a world where so many are lost in illusion? The answer is as simple as it is difficult. You stop trying to be her fantasy. You stop performing, you stop twisting yourself into the shape of someone else's emotional story just to be chosen. Instead, you must begin the arduous but essential work of building a life so rooted in truth, so powerful in its presence, that any woman who enters your orbit has no choice but to drop her fantasy and face the man. You lead with unwavering clarity, you move with unshakable purpose, you make peace with the fact that not all women can handle this level of reality, and you accept that that's okay. Let them dream. Let them chase sparks, shadows, and the emotional highs of a fleeting moment. But you remain unmoved, because you know a fundamental truth that they have yet to learn. Fantasy fades, but truth builds kingdoms. You must build your frame. Your frame is the operating system of your life. It is your reality, composed of your principles, your mission, your boundaries, and your non-negotiable standards. It is the fortress of which you are the king. When a woman enters your life, she is entering your frame. A weak man, desperate for approval, will immediately collapse his frame to try and fit into hers. He will abandon his routine, change his opinions, and silence his own intuition to avoid disrupting her emotional narrative. He becomes a tugboat, frantically chasing her ship out into her emotional storm, trying to drag her back to a safe harbor, only to get tossed around and sunk by the very waves he was trying to save her from. The grounded man, however, is a lighthouse. He does not chase, he does not move. He is built on a foundation of solid rock, his purpose and his principles. He simply stands tall, holds his ground, and shines his light, his truth, his clarity, his standards. Ships can either use his light to navigate safely to his shore, or they can ignore it and crash upon the rocks of their own chaotic navigation. The lighthouse's power lies in its stillness, in its refusal to venture into the storm. Its function is to be, not to chase. This is why your detachment becomes your greatest weapon. It's not a cold, heartless indifference. It is a calculated understanding that your validation must come from within, from the fulfillment of your purpose. This detachment is your refusal to get on the emotional roller coaster. When she creates drama, you become a black hole of non-reaction. When she gets distant to test you, you get busier and more focused on your mission. You don't just ignore her chaos. You become the mirror that reflects it back at her. Without your emotional reaction to feed on her own drama has nowhere to go, it starves. Suddenly, she's not the star of the show anymore. She's standing in an empty theater, wondering why the audience left. That's when the discomfort hits. That's when she is forced to question the story. If she is capable of growth, she might begin to wake up, not because you lectured her, but because you didn't. Your silence and your unwavering reality forced her to look in the mirror. This process turns you into her unwilling emotional accountability partner. By simply existing in your truth, you make her accountable to her own. If she claims she wants a stable, strong man but consistently rewards chaos and weakness, your presence makes that hypocrisy undeniable to her. She has two choices: level up to meet your reality, or flee to find a weaker man whose frame she can dominate. This is the great filter of a man who lives in reality. It automatically filters out the tourists, the performers, and the drama addicts. It filters out the women who are not ready, and that is a gift. You must understand, most will flee. They will call you cold, heartless, or emotionally unavailable. Not because you are wrong, but because you refuse to feed their fantasy. And that, brother, is your power. You didn't bend. You didn't perform. You didn't sacrifice your integrity just to make her feel comfortable in her illusions. While that might not always get you the girl, it will always allow you to keep your self-respect. You will remain the man. The ultimate reward for this path isn't just attracting a higher quality of woman, one who has also done her own inner work and is tired of illusions. The ultimate reward is peace. It's the unshakable inner calm that comes from knowing that your happiness, your stability, and your worth are not contingent on anyone else's emotional weather. You build your kingdom not to impress a queen, but because it is your duty as a man to build. And a man who has built his own kingdom, who finds fulfillment in his own purpose, radiates an energy that is more attractive than any fleeting fantasy. He doesn't win by getting the girl, he wins by getting himself. He wins by living a life that is so true, so aligned with his core, that he no longer needs to chase anything. And when you reach that level of detachment, that's when everything you used to chase, respect, admiration, and genuine, reality-based love, starts chasing you. So let her chase dreams, let her live in her movie, but you live in reality. Because that's where the real ones are. That's where peace is. That's where love begins, not in the fantasy she scripted, but in the truth you refuse to compromise. Be that man, and everything that is real will find you.